My favorite new dad.
Jake, how you doing?
Alhamdulillah. All praise is due to Allah. Well, not as good as you are. You seem as though I know you haven't slept a full night in probably 2-3 weeks. You know, but no, man. You know, just joined our fraternity of fathers. You know, we're gonna have to initiate you a little bit later.
Yeah. Please let me know when the ceremony is. I'll be there.
There's a lot of hazing. There's a lot of hazing that goes on to get into this fraternity. But I was saying, and how is your daughter?
She's good. She's good. You might be able to hear her. She's about to start crying, but she's doing good.
Just making the noise that she's supposed to make.
That's right. That's right.
That those cries for her, that's all praise to Allah. That's all. That's just praise. That's just praise. That's when a person told me, if we could make dua, if we could pray to God as purely as a child cries, we'd be somewhere. Because the child cries with complete confidence. Somebody gonna hear this, and somebody is gonna give me what I need. There's one teacher, a whole lecture. He said, your job as a parent is to take that experience of the child crying out for you and just grow it until they connect it to God. But they begin with believing that, I am in distress and all I have to do is make my distress known. I'm wet, I'm hungry, I'm uncomfortable. If I just open my mouth and make that known, there's some aid, there's some help, there is some support that's coming to me. Like that's what they believe. Freud has some interesting ideas about that. He said that, children, I personally think Freud was just, always on heroin and probably was, out of his mind. But he said that children really believe that they have like magical powers, that they probably believe that they could I just cry, boom, this food comes. I get changed when I'm wet. And his thing was that it is only when they're being potty trained. This is the first instance of them seeing that there is something that is natural that they have to not do. And he said that this is the first time it's like, you can't just wet your diaper or you can't just go on your diaper. That's the first time they experience any limitations. Right, which is crazy. Sania Merchant. Salam alaikum. How are you? Alhamdulillah. But in any event, I was giving this lecture in New York State, and somebody from the audience asked me, what's the hardest part of being a Muslim? And I was just telling them, just managing guilt, managing shame, and it's kind of like sometimes, God forgive me, I think about things I used to do before I was Muslim. I could do them and enjoy them because I didn't really understand them to be wrong. So I could experience them, and I was just, it wasn't like, after becoming Muslim, you do the same things and you're driving very slow on the way home thinking, oh God, like this. What if the car crashes? What, you wake up and you feel remorse, regret. Oh, what have I done? This is a bad decision. So in that way, even the experience that you were seeking in disobedience, you can't even enjoy it the same way you used to before you were Muslim. It's like, it's accompanied by a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. You can't even enjoy it, right? And, I think he accepted that answer. But when I asked him, are you a Muslim? He said, no. I said, what's the hardest part of not being Muslim? Right? In fact, he was an atheist. I'm not religious at all. I don't believe in God. I said, what's the hardest part of not believing? He said, I have experienced so much unearned privilege and favor in my life. I actually can see how in my health, in my wealth, in my faculties, in my experience, I have experienced a lot of things that I did not earn and that I probably don't deserve. And there are people who are more deserving than I am of those good things, that don't have them. And when I look at that, I'm not satisfied to call it luck. To say, I was lucky. I guess I was lucky and they were unlucky. And I don't believe in a God that I could thank. It just leaves you feeling really frustrated. Like he is experiencing what's called in English providence. This is something like there's no doubt in my mind. Many of us have had that experience where something good happened to you and you knew, and this wasn't anything but God. This wasn't something that I did. This wasn't something that I deserved. This was just God's favor upon me. Now, for the Muslim, it's easy because you could just say, Alhamdulillah. You just say, all praises due to God. And you have essentially relieved your anxiety. It's like, I know it wasn't for me. It was from God. I've acknowledged that. So it was from God. I've acknowledged that. If you're a person that doesn't have faith, then you are in a very frustrated position. Like, I know it's not for me. It's not satisfying to just say I was lucky. I really don't know what to say. And that's what he was saying was the hardest part about not believing in God. When you study the names and attributes of God, you are learning more and more what to say and when to say it. When you see something happen, you can say, this is a manifestation of God's name, so-and-so. This is a manifestation of God's name, so-and-so. If you do this regularly, you will begin to see God in everything. See, that's the truth of the 99 names of God, that you begin to see God everywhere. That you see something happen, that's a manifestation of this name. You see something happen, that's from this name of Allah. You see something happen, that is from this name of Allah, right? So that you see everything in creation as reflecting God. Today we have 3 names that I think are some of the most important names to reflect on in our context. We have Al-Khaliq, which means the creator. Khaliq, the creator. We have Al-Bari, which means the innovator, one that begins something from scratch, ex nihilo, right? The Bari. And Al-Musawwir, the shaper, right? The one who shapes, forms, designs. Taswir is literally picture making, right? The giver of images. So if you look at the first of those names, Al-Khaliq, this is one of the most fundamental names of Allah. And it's interesting that there are some names of God that human beings share in, right? So a human being can be named Kareem. Kareem means generous, noble. But a human being cannot be Al-Kareem. We can call her Karima, right? She's generous, she's noble. But God is Al-Kareem. A human being can be named Hakim, wise. Hakima, wise. But they can't be Al-Hakim, the wise, right? A human being can be Alim, right? Knowledgeable. But they can't be Al-Alim, the knowledgeable. A human being can be Aziz, or have strength that comes from dignity, but they can't be Al-Aziz. Khaliq is one of those names you cannot, it is actually haram. You cannot call, if a person's name is Abdul Khaliq, you cannot call them Khaliq for sure. Khaliq, you can't say he's a Khaliq. No. There's only one Khaliq. There's only one creator. You can't call her Khaliqa. Hey, Khaliq. There's only one creator. Right? So it's interesting in that human beings have no share in this name. We are not creators. Right? Now, there's different words that we use for creativity, like ibda. You can be a mubdi'. So you could be a mukhtari'. If I invent something, right? But English, man, we don't be giving enough credit to English, man. I can be an inventor of something, In Arabic, we say like mubdi'. I can create, it's like, I don't know, not Steve Jobs, but the Chinese people that actually did create this phone. You know what I'm saying? We can call them inventors, right? They made it. They made it, they invented it, but they didn't create it. You would never say she created that. She invented that, right? She invented that, right? Khaliq is the name of God that I think, and again, this is just me talking, so you don't have to accept any of it. I think this is the beginning of a natural exploration of who God is. We are uniquely conscious beings. And when people explain human consciousness, they say we are aware of our thingness, like human beings are aware of themselves. There's no sign that animals are self-aware in that way. Other creatures are self-aware in that way. We're actually aware of our existence in time space, right? Human beings can contemplate. She can think, I wonder what came before this. I wonder what will come after this. Right? This is a very uniquely human activity. I wonder what brought all of this into existence. You know, I was flying on Saturday evening. I did a program in Columbus, Ohio. And as we were landing, I was just looking over Chicago. And I thought to myself, you know, one of the reasons I'm religious is that all of the explanations that don't involve God about how this could come about seem more far-fetched to me than God. I'm thinking about if someone would have asked me, how would you explain the existence of all of this, not including a Khaliq, a creator? Everything I hear is just like, it's not satisfying. The philosophical answer, and this was the answer of like Socrates, Aristotle, was that the world has always existed. See, that's how they would try to get out of explaining creation, that it's not appropriate to ask, how was the world brought into existence? The world has always existed. So they would say the world is eternal. The world has always existed. And that's the way they would explain that. One of our mashayikh, he said, that is a completely unnatural way of looking at anything. That even if you take Eric and Allah's daughter, as she gets older, and I stand behind this, if I roll the ball out from behind this, what do you call this? Banner. If I roll the ball out from behind this banner, it will be natural for the child to go and look to see where it came from. That the child would never at any point think it's always been there. No. If it's there, it must have come from a place. In fact, we have arrived to the point in the sciences. Now, I think most scientists are still atheist or agnostic. Either I think the most honest of them are agnostic. Like, even Richard Dawkins said, it's impossible to say that something doesn't exist. Like, I can't, even him as an avowed atheist, he is willing to say, it's impossible to say that something, you can't say what doesn't exist, right? But I don't see any strong evidence for the existence of God. What a fool. I don't see any strong, so here the man is telling you, it's just my heart. He's telling you, he's saying, he's saying, as a scientist, I can't 100% say what doesn't exist. I can't, science doesn't have that reach and stuff. I can't say 100% what doesn't exist. But I can say, I just don't see any compelling evidence of the existence of God. He's telling you, how do you see it? Meaning, أنا عند ظن عبدي بي. I am in the opinion of my servant. He said, it's me. He's telling it's me. I just don't see it. Right? You take a woman or a man that is a friend of God, and they're looking at him thinking, that's all I see. No, it's like, he's saying, I don't see anything. I don't see any evidence. I can't see it. You take another person, that's all I see. I don't see anything else. That's all I see. And those two experiences, in the great disparity that exists between them, is just astounding. But when people say, well, it was the Big Bang, what produced the bang? I'm not in any way being anti-intellectual. Anyone who knows me, they know I'm not anti-intellectual, I'm not anti-science. But what caused the bang? Right? That primordial soup, right? That the bang exploded and released, that became the created order. Where did that primordial soup come from? Those initial atoms, who created them? What? It is very hard for human beings, given our experience of the physical world, to believe that something has an origin without an originator. That's not how we experience life. That's not how we experience life. That something has an origin, but it doesn't have something that brought it into being. That's not how we experience life. Our experience of life is that every makhluk, every creature, every created object has a khaliq, has a creator. One of the ways that we see one of the ways that we see evidence of that creator is in all of the seemingly arbitrary details of creation. Meaning, why this and not something else? Why this shape and not that shape? Why are the mountains jagged in this way and not some other way? Why? It would indicate that there is a will. Something is doing this. Something is deciding upon all of the details and features that you see in creation. I was listening to, and I fell in this wormhole. I was listening to all these. I wanted to know about scientists and what's happening with scientists' belief in God or not belief in God. And the most sober and sensible of them, he said, paleontologist, he said, man, at this point, and it's amazing how they have this kind of self-satisfied presentation of sophistication. Like his thoughts are very profound. These are the thoughts of a child, but he thinks that these thoughts are very profound. He said, well, at this point, I think that we've arrived to a place in our understanding of the cosmos and the universe that we can actually say, if the earth were just a small amount closer to the sun, life wouldn't be possible. Everything would burn. And if the earth were just infinitesimally removed from the sun, everything would freeze. He said, we know that our stratosphere has the exact right balance of chemical elements to facilitate life. The same thing with our natural environment, that were you to take something like, imagine Beautiful man. That's when you hear it like that and you still say mashallah, you know that is beautiful. Mashallah. But he said that there are so many aspects of the created world that were they to be even slightly different. I want you to imagine, and it's actually the proportions and ratios that he was discussing much greater than this. But he said, imagine all of these walls in this room covered with characters, numbers, letters, right? He said, if you were to move one of them somewhere, just like this whole wall, every wall in this room was covered with letters and numbers. If you were to take one and just move it like over here, that would be enough to make creation impossible. Human would not be if you move just one of them, just like a little bit to the left. Right? If you move just one little bit to the left, there's no life. He said, at this point, I think it's safe to say creation has had some kind of designer. That's all I can say about that. You know what I mean? At this point, I think it's safe to say. And then some people responded with, what about string theory? That if you have kind of an infinite amount of chances, right? An infinite amount of chances, you can get that combination. So imagine like the lottery, right? Imagine the lottery. If a person has an infinite amount of chances to hit the lottery, they will eventually hit it. That is what string theory is saying. If a person has, if you give them chance after chance after chance, eventually they will come to that number. And one person said, no. He said, string theory is like saying, if you had a bunch of monkeys banging on a keyboard, just smashing on a keyboard, smashing on keys, right? He said, the chance that they can come up with one intelligible sentence of English, maybe. It's unlikely even that they could do that. You just have to just hit the keyboard like this. If they can come up with one sentence of intelligence, but they could write a whole novel, not even if they had an infinite amount of time. This was a scientist speaking, right? Who was a creationist scientist that, yeah, if you just let them think for eternity, they just hit the keyboard. That maybe at some point they write a sentence. He said, maybe that could happen. But that at any point they're going to write a novel, it's not going to happen. That's impossible. He said, the chance of that happening is almost zero. And he said, the creation of the world occurring in that random way would be like them writing 20, 30, 40,000 novels. Just hitting keys. I think it's safe to say at this point, the world has had some kind of creator, some kind of designer. He said, but that can't be confirmed scientifically. And I don't subscribe to any belief in a higher power or anything. But for people who think, people who believe in a higher power are unscientific or stupid, he said, no, that's actually not the case. That's actually not the case. I mean, it's as good an explanation as any. This is what this non-believing, it's as good an we really don't know. You know, there's a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا أَشَدْتُ خَلْقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَلَا خَلْقَ أَنفُسِهِمْ. This is actually one of my favorite verses of the Quran. Well, Allah says, addressing the disbelievers, we did not make them the witnesses of the creation of the heavens and the earth, or of their own creation. So really, with all of the instruments of science, that is a question you will never know. so that it would remain a question of faith. Allah said, we didn't make them, it wasn't something we showed you. But then Allah says what? The creation of the heavens and earth is actually much greater a feat than your creation. This is why it's good to spend time in nature. Allah saying that the human being, Mount Everest, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, the 7 continents, this is much more miraculous than you. As he said, this is much more miraculous. You, that was the easy part. Now this is in the Quran, that was the easy part. What you should be talking about, the creation of the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system. That is worth saying. Wow. A friend of mine told me his belief in God was lukewarm until he visited the Grand Canyon. He said he sat in the Grand Canyon and said, there's a God. This is what started his Tawbah. No, there's a God. No, there's a God. There's a God. Right? So Khaliq refers to the creation of Allah. Allah is the creator. Allah is the creator. Everything you see, Allah brought it into existence. A book that I would really recommend was the book called Islam Between East and West by Ali Izzat Begovich, who's a former president of Boston, but also a scholar and a philosopher. Beautiful, beautiful book. But he said one thing about the creation of God that stuck with me that I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, we do not deny evolution, kind of an evolution of species, that in the way God creates, species can evolve from each other. So that's not anything a Muslim has to feel like. He said, what we may, he said, what we maintain is that the human creature is an addition to God's creation that is complete and special. The way that the human being is. We don't even have to deny that there were pre-humanoid, that there were pre-humanoid forms that resembled human beings in some way. We don't have to deny that. So people talk about Cro-Magnon, man. We say we don't have to deny that maybe, but say that Adam, represents a creation that was created by God, especially the way that it was. The reason we believe that is that evolution would only be able to produce like super animals. You would take an animal and then through evolutionary processes, that animal might acquire more strength or more intelligence, but it would still be like all other animals, guided by its instincts. You will not see a uniquely conscious being evolve from beings that are not conscious in that way. Do you understand what I'm saying? Meaning, something with the consciousness of the human being cannot evolve from a gorilla. Because that doesn't happen. Right? He said, no, that consciousness, that thing that makes us human is something that must be implanted in a human creature. And that is how we understand the creation of Adam. That consciousness, that free will, that ability to perceive meaning and live beyond the merely instinctual, God has to put that in a creature. It's not something that evolves like giraffes having a long neck. That's something that can evolve. The neck can get longer. Or like, I don't know, that's the only evolutionary natural selective process I know, is giraffes having a long neck. That's something that can evolve. Muslims don't have to deny that. Over time, yeah, giraffe can evolve. But consciousness does not evolve. It's something that's implanted, it's inserted in a human being. And he said, for people that want to understand consciousness, you don't have to look at that purely through the prism of faith. You can also see it through art. That, there's something in the human consciousness that perceives meaning so that when a human being sees a sunset, they see something worthy of being captured in art. Animals don't do that. You can give an animal a paintbrush, put the paintbrush in the elephant's trunk, and the elephant can actually like mimic the technical details of painting, right? And some other animals too. But when they do that, they're not doing art. They're just mimicking a human being. It's not that they actually see something that, oh, look at that. Talk to the other elephants, yo, look at that, man. That's beautiful. Yo, go get my canvas. I want to make something. Because they don't have a consciousness in that way, right? They have just been trained to mimic human beings. So just put this in your trunk and just do this right here. But they're not conscious of it as an activity that is trying to capture meaning through the production of art. It's not like that. Then he said, I never forgot this, man. He said, that is why imitation art is not worth anything. Because imitation art does not come from a human being's consciousness. It's just the technical, if somebody remakes the Mona Lisa, it's not worth anything because it doesn't come from his consciousness. It's not that he saw the picture and tried to capture the spirit of that picture in this portrait. No, he just mimicked the portrait as it exists. That's why it's worthless. Don't mean that. It is not the actual object that means something, it's the fact that it emanates from a human consciousness. That's what makes it valuable. That consciousness is something that God creates. It's something that God puts into a creature. And that is what we mean when we talk about Adam and Hawa. They are the first creatures that God put that into them. The first human creatures that God put that into them and created them in that way. Beyond that, you can have pre-human forms, other kinds of natural selection, other kinds of evolution. So one way of understanding this, we believe in microevolution, but not macroevolution. Small like forms coming from other forms, yes, that's very possible. But God creates men and women and gives them a beginning in creation. And they begin from that point. The other name that we're discussing today is Al-Bari. God is the innovator. And many times when God's quality of being Al-Bari is mentioned, it's talking about the actual Bari and Musawwir. That God is the one that actually makes things look the way that they look. So when somebody is a racist or a sexist or a xenophobe, or they are really frustrated with God's creative power, you see, God creates with broad variety, and somehow that makes you mad. Now, brother, that's my sister. But somehow that makes you upset. It makes you uncomfortable. God has created Black people, white people, Native folks, Chinese folks, Japanese folks, Taiwanese folks, Indian folks, European folks. This is God's creative power, but somehow that makes you upset. It is God who shapes you in the wombs of your mothers however he wants to. The wise person is always saying, SubhanAllah. There are really people like that. And that's in their physical characteristics, in their beliefs. If you are rooted in the Quran, every time you learn something new about God's creation, you should be saying, SubhanAllah. I never even knew people like that existed. SubhanAllah. SubhanAllah. You know, I remember once, Jesse Ventura, who was a wrestler, became governor of the state of Minnesota. He said he was talking to Muhammad Ali, boxer. He said that Muhammad Ali drew a picture of planet Earth on a whiteboard. You know, you clear this Earth. He said, I was the champion of all that. He said, I was the champion of all that. Sometimes, man, when I'm flying or just traveling, I just look at the Khaliq. I just look at the creation and think, God is not only the creator, but the designer of all of that. SubhanAllah. It's mind-blowing. God is the creator of all that. It's something that should make you almost like shiver. Like, man, there's such jalal in it. Like, man, that's cold, man. You know, sometimes I think, this is just my own way of expressing this idea, but we might get too spiritual to even appreciate God. Right? When you see something in the world, like you see a great work of architecture, or a beautiful car, beautiful home, beautiful person, there is something in you that should be impressed by that. Some people are so dedicated to not being impressed by the dunya that they don't realize that you're not impressed by the creator of the dunya. Our goal is not to be fixated on the dunya, but whenever you see something, you should say, Allah is the creator of all of that. Allah is the creator. Allah is the God of all of that. Man, that's amazing, man. Really, it's something that, subhanAllah, it's beautiful. You know, I was in Egypt, and there was a white convert to Islam who I haven't seen in many years, named Dawood or David Sutton. He was from Glastonbury, UK. And he was very much a hippie. Dawood was a straight up hippie. He had long ponytail, and he worked as a professional artist, but he was Muslim. And it was funny because every time we would go to Jummah, people would come up to him and give him books like Welcome to Islam, or learn something about Muslims. Or they would ask him, are you Muslim? And he would say in his kind of wry British, no, I'm not Muslim. I'm a dude who's praying Jummah. Of course I'm Muslim. You know what I'm saying? But they would always, welcome to Islam. And one day I was with him and we were discussing the difference between aesthetics and beauty. Because I was using them as though they were interchangeable. Aesthetics and beauty. And he said, you have to understand, there's a distinct difference between aesthetics and beauty. I said, what's the difference? He said, aesthetics are it's a way of understanding art or design that one needs to understand a distinct history of art and design. So when you see something done, okay, she's referencing so and so. This is kind of an ode to Cubism. This is where you can tell he's a student of Picasso, but he's expanding on what Picasso did, and he's doing something different. If you don't have all of that knowledge, then you won't understand the aesthetics. Like, you don't really see, when we say something aesthetic, we're talking about like how elements of design relate to each other in the present and in history, right? So if somebody understands like fashion, for example, they will know, okay, this is kind of an athleisure that's kind of referencing what was formerly formal wear, but is now like they're aware of everything that's happening there. They see, basically aesthetics, he said aesthetics was like when you look at something that has been designed and you can see what's happening. Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, I see what you're doing, rather, with kind of the lived-in times, with, this is kind of like that city kind of casual look. I see what you're doing. I see that's aesthetics. Like I can see what's happening here, right? Beauty is something where you don't need any knowledge. You don't need to be aware of what's happening. It's something that captivates you just because you have a soul. That's something that's beautiful. You could be uncivilized, uncouth, savage, and you're still moved by beauty. Beauty is something that, I said, give me an example. He said, like looking up at the stars. See, when you look at the stars, you don't need to be an astronomer. Now people might provide you with some details that might make the experience even more profound. When they tell you, every star that you see, the light is 50,000 years old. So the star is probably dead by the time you see it. And you're just like, damn. You know, it's like, you know, oh, you know, it's like, ooh, you know what I'm saying? But I didn't need to know that. To still look and say, that's really something. And he said, if you look at the stars long enough, especially if you go to a place without a lot of, you know, light pollution, he said, you look up there. He said, first you'll say, wow, that's really beautiful. Then you'll say, man, it's really impressive. And if you look longer, you'll feel something at the back of your neck like, ugh. You think that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know what I'm saying? You see, that's Al-Bari. God is the one that does that. Musawwir, a lot of people, when they talk about Musawwir, somehow Musawwir is often related to human beings. Who are they? Yusawwirukum fil arhami kayfa yasha. Right? That taswir, how we actually look. That God formed you. God shaped you. And I always ask people, the particular, I guess, phenotype or characteristics of people, notwithstanding, our basic form as human beings, could you imagine it being any more beautiful? Like we had a third eye, or the mouth was here, or the hands came out of the neck, or something. Could you imagine the human creature, the human form being any more beautiful? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Mulk, if you look at the entire creation and try to find tafawut, something that's off, your vision will return to you completely worn out because there's nothing off. There's nothing off. You look and you're just like, everything is right. Everything is right. There's nothing that's like, you know, I would have probably did that. You know, it's funny, I've never heard anybody say, you know, I probably did that. That probably, if I was designing the human being, I probably would have put the eyes right there and then put the mouth. It's you know, even if you're Salvador Dali, you can't even imagine. It's too weird. It's too weird. In fact, you know, when I was a kid, you know what used to just scare me? The thing that I just couldn't, and even now, I mean, I've learned to hold my composure so as not to be offensive to people. Human deformity used to just like when I saw Total Recall, and then I remember the Total Recall movie, and it was the owl and the thing, I was just like, you know, because there's something about messing with that Adamic form that's like, it throws me off. Whatever, it's like if you show me something that is not human, then you can make it look any way you want to. But if it looks human, but different, it's very scary to me. Which is, subhanAllah, why do you think that when human beings imagine aliens, they always imagine them to be Adamic in a way, but deformed? They never imagine them being something completely different because we couldn't even imagine something different. That is the way that God is. We can't even imagine something different. We imagine them basically being like human beings, but like a little bit different, right? And I think sci-fi writers are deeply spiritual in different ways, because whenever they imagine aliens, they always imagine them to be what? More sophisticated than us. The aliens never show up and say, hey, yo, man, how do y'all do this, man? No, they always got better technology, we'll blow up everything. They're always smart, because up always represents better. Right? We're conscious that the dunya is the lowest world. The human beings are conscious of. That's what I'm about sci-fi writers. They're conscious that the dunya that we inhabit, this is the lowest. Everything above this is better. And when aliens show up, they're always bigger, you know, strong. Superman, the aliens come, they wearing black, they slam and everything. They like, you know, the aliens always better. Always better. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to people fighting wars, this is just a way to think about this, man. You think about your Lord as being Musawwir. He said to people fighting wars, if you can, avoid striking in the face. People, now we're talking about people fighting legitimate enemies. Don't strike in the face, because every human face carries the bearing of your father Adam. Every human face. And Allah says what? We created Adam and Eve directly. Right? So this is the creative handiwork. This is the creative power and intuition of God when you see a human being. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you can, always avoid striking the face because of that nobility that is in the face. Don't hit people in the face, right? So I'm not to upset anybody's sensibilities, but when the Sahaba would fight, they would strike there. That's what they would strike. They wouldn't slash over the face. They would try to strike at the neck, right? Because there's a certain nobility in the human face that you don't want to, خلق الله آدم على صورته. Now this is the subject of great debate. We're not going to debate it, but the Prophet ﷺ said, Adam was created on his form. Allah created Adam on his form. Some people have said that his goes back to Allah. That the way human beings look bears some resemblance to how the divine looks. But that's not the popular opinion. The popular opinion is that ala suratihi, the a'id, the damir, the ha goes back to Adam. That Adam was created as a grown adult person. That Adam did not have the stages of creation like he was created as a baby, a toddler, then a mula, and then he was created as an adult right away, and he looked like he looked right away. Because sometimes I know Eric and I, you think the baby looks cute, but the baby might not always look like that. You know what I mean? They all start out cute, and they'll always be cute to us. No matter what happens, they will always be cute to us. But the babies change. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I look at pictures of my son, I say, man, he looking more and more like me every day. I feel sorry for him. He started out, he had more of his mom in him. I see the picture of him Saturday, I said, boy, looking more and more like me every day. Every day, it's just changing. So many people say the hadith refers to the fact that Adam, the way he, like his final look, like I guess, after you go through puberty and your features kind of settle, and it's like, okay, that's you. That Adam was created just like that. That's you. So that face, it was the creative power and intuition of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's a thing to behold, man. Even though by the word of the Quran, the creation of the heavens and earth is more impressive than the creation of human beings. Allah says that in the Quran, right? أشد خلقا من السماوات والأرض. It's more. It's like, it's not, if you're thinking I'm really something, go to Mount Everest. No, that's really something. If you're thinking, sometimes when you travel, or if you just go, if you go to Lake Michigan, it's good to see things in the creation of God that make you feel small. You look and think, dude, I'm an ant in Africa, man. Like really, I mean, and we're just looking at the dunya. We didn't even talk about everything God has created. You are like, and yet, even though you're a speck, it is actually your heart that contains the faith of God. It's not in your, in your creation, it's not the most wondrous thing, but it's not the biggest. It's not the most impressive. I was talking to my children one day and I said, human beings have been endowed with special characteristics. لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. I said, because, and many people debate, what is it about human beings that's so special? What is it about human beings? Some people say, and there's some interesting answers out there in the Islamic tradition. Some people say, what's really special about human beings? Is the thumb. I thought that's the least inspiring answer. It's just the thumb. They said, man, it's all about the thumb, baby. It's all about the thumb. They said, because it is your thumb that makes your hand prehensile. See, the reason we can make all kind of complex tools is because we have a thumb. If you didn't have it is actually the thumb that gives you the ability to do all of the shaping, making. That's what makes our hands different than, say, gorilla hands, right? So why we can, and he said, and it is with our hands that we can make all of the tools that protect us against all of the other elements of creation. You see, it's because I can, but it's also the intellect. So when you go to, you go to a circus and you see or a zoo, you see animals that could crush, kill, destroy a human being. But they're all on chains being fed by human beings. Right? Because there's something, how God has created the human being, there's a special, there's a special something. They never call it the uncommon. You notice that? So, well, there's a special something that God has invested in human beings. And when you talk about practically living with this, especially in this month, with everything everybody is talking about right now, it is especially important to say that, man, we acknowledge the nobility and dignity of all human beings. Right? That's a part of who we are. Even apart from the moral or immoral choices that they make, there's something dignified, there's something special about human beings. And our religion seeks to honor that. Our religion seeks to honor, there's something special about there's something special about human beings, and that's often related to the name of God, Al-Musawwir. God is the shaper. You are special not only because of who you are, but whose you are. Whenever anybody dies, we say, "Well, inna lillahi." We belong to God. We belong to God. That is the thing that gives us value. For us, that is what gives us value. Inna lillahi, we belong to God. Right? Sometimes I think about every person you see, no matter how they are, how they look, what they're struggling with, and they're an expression of God's creative power. God created them and brought them into existence. God did that. God created them, brought them into existence. They also have angels that accompany them, that follow them, that are with them. And you have to find a way of honoring that in them, even if that's not how they see themselves, even if they want to be recognized for other things. But before we get into any of that, I respect you and honor you as a human being. Let's start there. Before we get into anything else, I respect you and honor you as a not because just you are who you are, but you are an expression of my Lord's creative power. My Lord created you, brought you into existence, shaped you, molded you. I marvel at you. Brothers, these are not pickup lines. These are not pickup lines. These are not pickup lines. But they do work. No, I'm just kidding. I marvel at you. You know what I mean? God created you, brought you into existence. Your beauty is a cause of praising God. I looked at you and just decided I needed to make more dinner. I only say these things to my wife. But these are names of God that we should hold very, very close. And just in terms of living with these names, get out in nature, man. See it, experience it, feel it. And it will become almost intrinsically foolish to you to say, man, there's no God. It's hard to say that. You're sitting out there, man, it's like, that's how I was telling y'all, man. When you guys came in, I was saying, one of the reasons I think I'm religious is that whenever I hear non-religious explanations of how the world came into existence, they sound more far-fetched to me than a religious explanation. It's almost like, I'm supposed to believe what? I stick with my belief in Allah. You know, think that just sounds straight there. Nah, I think I stick with God, man. It just, you know, I just don't, just doesn't resonate. It's just like, I just, subhanAllah. I don't know, man. Some of these people, man, it's like, it's really kufr. The word kufr in Arabic means to cover something. The farmer in classical Arabic was called the kafir because she goes out, she sows the seed in the ground, and then she covers it with dirt. That's why in Egypt, there's a neighborhood called Kafr al-Sheikh. Kafr al-Sheikh. Doesn't mean that the sheikh became a disbeliever. It means the sheikh farmed. Kafr al-Sheikh. Right? If somebody Egyptian here, they're like, oh, mashallah, Kafr al-Sheikh. I'm from Kafr al-Sheikh. Right? I mean, the sheikh went out, he did some farming, covered the seed with dirt. And they say that people who disbelieve, they're covering something they intrinsically know. You're covering something. Because this same person that will go out hiking, same person that will scale Kilimanjaro and say, there's no God. We look at a painting on a canvas this big and say, it's marvelous, wonderful, the colors, the artist that created it is a genius. I know this make this, I might get my black card revoked, but I don't care. I look at Basquiat's art and I say, I don't know what people see in it. I got art books in my home of Basquiat's artists. I see people that profess to be atheists. It's just the way he just, the message is mind-blowing. The creativity of Jean-Michel Basquiat. It's just, and I look at the whole creation of Allah and say, I just don't see that. I just don't see what, I just, you know, I don't know. I don't believe in a creator. I just, but the painting of Jean-Michel Basquiat, the colors are just mind-blowing. Oh. But the Amazon rainforest, yeah, I mean, you know, I don't know. Maybe the Big Bang. I don't know. You know, I was thinking, you can look at a little piece of art this big and be astounded at the design and the designer. Look at the whole creation of God and say, you're covering something. You're covering something. You're covering something. You know, man, one of my least favorite presidents is Ronald Reagan. I grew up in the era of Reaganomics. It was bad. That's, you know, Reagan, if there was one president that I would say, the war on drugs that incarcerated so many members of my community, and, you know, the crack epidemic that destroyed, that was Reagan's. Those was Reagan's years. You know, the war on drugs, that was Ronald and Nancy Reagan. They kicked that into high gear. You know, all the crack laws and, you know, decimated, you know, fatherhood in the community and sent everybody to jail. It was Reagan. What is that? Reagan. The Reagan years. But Reagan said something that I appreciate. Reagan said that he had some National Society of Atheists or something like that at the White House. He was having dinner with them. And he said that he wanted to make it where it was the most elaborate meal that the chefs in the White House could prepare. And when the people took it off, they were all, oh my God, this is an impressive meal. Who's the chef? Reagan just told them, it's always been here, man. The food has always been here. They said, no, of course somebody cooked it. He said, so you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Reagan was a Christian. You see what it'd be ridiculous. You're covering something. If I said that to you about this food, right, it's just the way it's plated, it's mind-blowing. How did it get here? It just jumped out the freezer and arranged itself. Just like that. It jumped out of the refrigerator, jumped into the pot, jumped onto the plate, jumped onto the table, and it just happened randomly. He said, no, man. He said, not only would they not believe it on the basis of their experience that doesn't happen, it's intrinsically false to the human being. What? Man, that's ridiculous. That don't happen. Who did this? He said, so why do you scoff at religious people asking the same thing about the whole cosmos? Who did this? What the? You did just, man, who did this, man? Who did this? I think it's impossible to wake up in this world and look around and not ask, hey, man, who did this? Who did this? Who put this together like this? And who gave me the ability to think about it? Hey, man, who did this? What happened here? How did this, right? Whenever you feel that, remember Al-Khaliq, Al-Bari, Al-Musawwir. And that's what we'll end today. If there are any questions, comments, follow-ups, you want to go upstairs and make an offer, all of that is open to you, inshallah. Yes.
But it's not related to the class.
It's okay.
I want to know what is Allah's guidance on jealousy?
Jealousy. Prophet Muhammad said that jealousy eats at a person's good deeds like fire eats wood. So what you want to think about there is that the quality that the prophet identifies jealousy by is this a consumptive quality. You know, sometimes I think, man, the prophetic language is so profound. You know, because when you see like fire and it's burning something, number one, it consumes everything. And when it smolders and it's crackling and it's almost like watching something burn, even if it's not an animate object, it's not something with feelings, it's still kind of agonizing. It's just like, even if I just see a piece of paper, the way the fire just consumes it and it breaks down. So there's this sense in which jealousy, it breaks people down. It paralyzes, like, you could just imagine a person just like being consumed by it. It's not, and it grows. See, jealousy is consumptive and it's expansive. It gets bigger. And there's no end to it. It goes more and more and more and more until a person is frustrated by any good that God has given anyone else. When they see it, it angers them. And the root cause is ingratitude. Why are you so angry that God has given something to somebody else? What about that angers you? Why are you so angry? Right? And, I think, this is me thinking out loud, I think the primary mistake of a jealous person is that they're given to a kind of scarcity mindset. That they think if they got it, I can't have it. Everything that's happened to someone else that's good for them, I've been demoted. What about me? That's what it's not about. What about me? She has a new husband, what about me? He has a new wife, what about me? Everybody loves her, why don't they love me? He has a good job, why don't they have a good job? It's a kind of scarcity that they're looking at the creation of God, that they're forgetting he can have a good job and you can have a good job. Right now, his test is the job. Your test is waiting for the job. And you don't know how that person is doing in their test, and you don't know how you're doing in yours. That's the other thing about jealousy. It's so shallow. Jealousy is something that thrives in a very superficial, shallow understanding of what you're jealous of. So you may see somebody's money and think, without knowing, maybe you don't wish you had money like that. You don't know what might happen to you. Maybe you don't wish you had money like that. Right? I wish everybody loved me like that. Not knowing this phone never stops ringing. I feel bad when I tell somebody, bro, I can't help you. You don't know when you see somebody get jealous of them, you don't know. Maybe it's good for them, maybe it isn't. Right? There was a man named Sufyan al-Thawri talking about jealousy. He said, I thank Allah for what I have, and I thank Allah for what I don't have. Sometimes I think to myself, now if Allah gave me millions, I would thank Allah for those millions. For sure. But do I thank Allah that I don't have the responsibility of being careful and God-fearing with millions of dollars? Who knows how I would do at that test? I might not pass with flying colors. One of my teachers, he told me, there's an amount of money that's just too much. He said, I could have a certain amount of money that I don't even think I could have a good argument with my wife. I just got too much money. Because as we're arguing, the 30 million is just kind of sitting in the background. Everything we're saying, divorce, not divorce, is this about the money? See, me and my wife to argue, that never comes up. Because ain't no money. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like everything she says, I'm predisposed to accepting it as something coming from pure sincerity. And everything I say, she feels the same way about it. Just this time, I'm just expressing my feelings. If we had 30 million between us, that a divorce would be, I'm gonna lose 15 million in a divorce. I don't believe nothing you're saying. I know what this is about. You trying to get my money. I know what this is about. So it's a certain amount of money that, hey, maybe I wish I had it. Maybe I don't wish I had it. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, so jealousy is, stay away from jealousy. Stay away from jealousy. And this is why everybody, Muslims, non-Muslims, whenever you see anybody with anything, say, mashallah. Just say it. That's what Allah wants. Say, mashallah, mashallah, mashallah. Say, mashallah. Say, mashallah. That's one thing I can say. My Desi brothers and sisters, they be on there, mashallah. They don't play about that. Don't give them nothing. We say, oh man, I like this color. Say, mashallah. 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 Don't. Just always just say, it's what Allah wanted. It's what Allah wanted. It's what Allah wanted. So, I said, envy is, it's a spiritual sickness. Spiritual sickness. And it's the quicker a person can rid him or herself of envy, better off they will be. Because it can, envy can make a person do horrible things. Some people explain the story of Shaitan and Adam, that Adam was honored by Allah, so the angels about him, that Satan was envious, that Satan was jealous. He's being honored, what about me? That everything we see in the dunya, all of this evil, that Shaitan is just aiding and abetting, he's doing this out of envy. All of this came from envy. That's probably the best example of just how dangerous it can be. This all came from jealousy. Right, so may Allah save us from jealousy, man. Yeah, may Allah save us from jealousy. And the thing is, it's a natural human tendency. That's why, just like comparing ourselves to other people, it's a natural human tendency. I knew somebody that said that they would wake up in the morning. She's a woman. Go and sit on a bus or a train, public transportation, and just look at every other girl getting on the train saying, she's prettier than me, I'm prettier than her. She's prettier than me, I'm prettier than her. She's prettier than me, I'm prettier than her. I met, she said, man, I was sick. But this is what this culture can do to people, man. I would get up, not going anywhere. I just want to sit on the train and sit by the door and just look. I'm prettier than her. Oh, but she's prettier than me. I'm prettier than her. Oh, but she's prettier than me. Oh, she's prettier than me too. Sick. It's sick now. It's just sick. It's a natural human tendency to compare ourselves to other people. What we have to do is find a way to appreciate what God has given us and appreciate what God has given them. Amen. Like, I am who I am. You know. However, it's important to distinguish between hasad and what's called a ghibta. Ghibta is when you see something good in someone else, you wish you had it too, but you don't want them to lose it. I just wish I had it. I wish I had that too. So when my brother, Sama Cannon, man, when he would make dua, I said, I wish I could make dua like that. You know, he was just take the whole room when you can just feel the power coming there. Then I'll be like, well, I'll in the side of the house. You know, I don't have that contagious spiritual, and I can't, you know, I wish I was like that. But I don't want him to lose that ability. I wish I had that. But I just, you know, whenever I make do, I get tongue tied. It just feels like somebody's like peeking into my personal thing. You know, I can't, you know, I just can't, you know what I'm saying? So it's okay to wish you had something that someone else has. Envy is when I want them to lose it. Why them? You know, there's some part of you that wants their downfall. You know, whenever you feel that, just say, mashallah, ask Allah to take it from me. Allah save me from envy. When you see some, you know, even when you're commenting on somebody, you know, he thinks he's so, that's usually envy. He thinks she just thinks she's so perfect. And then people are there, they gloat at the person's misfortunes. But you also have to be very careful not to attract it. Like I remember there was a thing in like the Western media, people just hated Gwyneth Paltrow. It just, you know what I mean? And Anne Hathaway, I just hated them. You know, I just want to see them fall. You know, man, why? That's crazy. Why you want to see? Why you want to see them fall? It's a weird quality that human beings have. It's a weird quality. I just want to see them down. And if you fall, they glow. See, I told you. I'm happy. Get away from me, man. That's sick, man. Yeah, that's sick, man. I don't want to see anybody fall because it's not gonna do anything for me. If you fall off, become poor, and I see you like eating out of a trash can, will I be happy? Oh, I'm so happy. Oh, wow, two boy, like, what's wrong with you, man? What's wrong with you, man? You know, I will say, I suffer from a lot of spiritual illnesses. Envy is just something I don't see in myself. You know, I don't see, you know, maybe envious of my son because he still has hair. So he just now he's trying to wear his little do-rag, brush, and trying to get his waves. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. Oh Allah, with the few words that I've been given, when I make my dua as meaningful and as impactful as people who make dua with lots of words and do so with great, you know, spiritual charisma. Ya Rabbal Alameen. Ameen, Ya Rabbal Alameen. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Well,